Good morning, folks. It's Bob Branch, the pastor at the Springs Community Church. And this morning, I want to bring you a word to encourage you, to feed you, to build you up, and to focus you. And that word continues along these lines of this topic we've been investigating over our last several times together. That is open heart, rich life. Open heart, rich life. That is, that when our hearts are open, it opens us up to the riches of God coming through relationship with other people, that we actually experience intimacy with God by experiencing intimacy with others. Now, I think that you have experienced this in different small micro moments in the past where you've been with somebody and you think, I feel curiously enriched by this time that I've had with this person. When you feel enriched in that way, you are actually experiencing something where your heart is opened up to them, and at the same time, their heart is opened up to you, and this intimacy that you feel is enriching, and God, the Spirit, is in on among that whole thing. He loves that business. He loves human closeness because He made us for that kind of closeness with Him and with each other. So I asked you, with this thesis of open heart, rich life, I asked you to ask the Holy Spirit, what is it that is closing my heart? What is closing your heart? And I asked you to reflect on that over the weekend because I think that this is something that we need to ponder on a while and process with the Lord. And if you journal this out, or however that you go about asking the Lord and paying attention to the things that God is saying to you, I still want to ask you to ask that question and to let the Holy Spirit show you. If you open up your heart to the Lord and say, Lord, show me what is closing my heart, He will show you. He's a beautiful surgeon when it comes to these things. He's the great physician. He knows how to work and to transform the human heart if that heart is available to Him. And so you open up your heart to Him and you say, Lord, I need you to help me to learn how to open up, period, to people and to you. So what comes on the heels of what causes your heart to close is the opposite question as well. What causes the human heart to open? And when I think of that question, I can't help but think of the person who is most safe in the whole world, the person who everyone wants to come to and unburden themselves, the person who everyone wants to come and say, this is what's going on with me. And you seem to be safe, that you are the one who is safe, and that is Jesus. That's not your local therapist, although your therapist might be safe, but the one who is safest in this whole thing on earth, except to religious people who are puffed up and really think they're something, or they think that they know everything, then Jesus isn't so safe. But to regular people like you and me, Jesus is safety incarnate. He is safety with flesh on. But what is it about Jesus that is so safe? He's safe for the woman at the well. He's safe for the woman caught in adultery. He's safe for Simon to come back after having denied Him 3 times. He's safe for all of these people to be able to come to Him and humble themselves and connect with Him. What is it that's safe? Well, I would quantify that in a number of different ways. And then when we look at the safety of Jesus, then we see, oh, that's the kind of safety I need to be with others, because that's what I need to open up my heart. That's what Jesus is for me. That's what I need to be with other people if I want to experience this open-hearted dynamic with them. And I would say, actually, biblical oneness is the product of an open heart. So when we are talking about that, this idea of Jesus being safe, I can't help but think of the contemporary stories of God reaching out to Muslim women all over the planet. He reveals Himself to them in dreams and in visions, and they universally, all these stories circulate, and there are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of these stories where Jesus shows up in their dreams. He's the man in white, and He's the first man that they've ever encountered that felt safe, because in their Muslim world, the men just aren't safe. The men are always looking to take from them. They're devalued. They're all these different things. Jesus is completely different. What is it about Jesus that makes Him safe? Well, firstly, He's safe because He's accepting. He accepts people the way that they are. He accepts you. He accepts me the way that I am. I remember when I was a young believer, actually, before I was a young believer, I was a young church kid. And I grew up in church, and I thought, this Jesus stuff and this religious stuff is just kind of interesting, but I don't know if it's really for me or not. But then my parents they separated several times and then divorced, and all of this sudden, Jesus's safety, Jesus being the one that I could go to and I could just unearth and cry my guts out with, because I had all this pain. I did not know what to do. And he accepted me and he enfolded me and wrapped me up in his love. And it changed me. It's a complete game changer in my life. That Jesus is accepting. He accepts you the way that you are. He doesn't leave you the way that you are, but he accepts you just the way that you are. That creates safety. A second thing is he's patient. It's amazing. I mean, think about who he chose as his followers initially. The 12, there's a tax collector. There are a couple of ruffian fishermen that I'm sure know how to speak sailor really well. He has this group of people. One's a zealot, and he's got these guys. They're not a group of guys that mix well with each other. And he is patient with them. It doesn't mean that he doesn't correct them. He does correct them, but he's patient with them. He's patient with the woman at the well. Would you give me a drink of water? And she says, how is it that you, a Jew, could ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink? That just doesn't happen. What on earth is going on here? Jews don't mix with Samaritans. Everyone knows that. But Jesus accepts her. Then he reads her mail, tells her that the man that you're living with is not even your husband at this point in time. And he accepts her. He's safe. He's patient with her. And as a result of that, her life is changed. That the acceptance and the patience of Jesus actually changes her. He doesn't bail out. He doesn't go for a quick exit from the discussion. He actually just sticks in there, and it changes her. He understands her as well, that he looks at her in her life. He looks at what it is that she's reacting to. Why is she out there drawing water in the middle of the day? Because she's not accepted by the other women in the town because of the history that she's got. She's a broken person. He's accepting. He's patient. And he understands. He doesn't necessarily always try to fix. I've had lots of times in my life where I have been torched and hurt, and the Lord has just sat with me. He hasn't fixed it. I remember, and there's a story, this is a kind of a deeper one for me, but at one point in time, I was being prayed for by some really sharpshooter people that knew how to operate in a word of knowledge and could really pray with a lot of specificity into my life. And this woman prayed, she put her hand on me, she said, I see a well. And then at the end of, I felt myself falling down in this well, and then I was at the bottom, and at the bottom, I realized it's an abyss. There are no walls. And this is a very funky place. And I realized that everything that is poured into this well dissipates, and this thing cannot be filled up. And I realized in a moment that was me. That was inside of me, that I had continued to try to pour all these things inside of myself to try to fill myself up, the approval of people, the better speaking, the success, all these different things. I've been trying to do all these things, and Jesus was with me there, but he didn't fix it. And I remember later on, in a different vision that the Lord kind of took me through, he and I sat on the edge of the well. And we just kind of talked about this idea that I can't keep pouring into that thing, because if I do pour into it, it's just going to dissipate. It's never going to fill up. It's not fillable. And the Lord was patient. He was accepting. He was merciful. And he was understanding with me. He just was with me. Another thing about acceptance, about Jesus being safe, is that he seems to be fairly slow to judge on this whole thing. We humans, we're quick to go to guns, we're quick to go to judgment. Jesus isn't so quick to that. And as I have these conversations with Jesus over and over again, I want to be really hard on myself, and the Lord isn't nearly as hard. He's not pulling the trigger. He's not ready to punch. He's like, no, we need to work on that. But that's not what I'm working on right now. And I want you to work with me here. I don't want you to work on things that I'm not working on. So could you set that aside for right now, and let's just stick with me here, and there's a generosity to him that is, it's really quite life-changing. That generosity is, it pierces the heart and lures you out at the same time. It melts you. And he's slow to judge. He disciplines, and he does discipline, but he listens and doesn't talk over us either. He hears us. When we pour out our hearts, he hears us and he draws us out. These are kind of qualities of someone who is safe. They're not all the qualities of safety, but they're qualities of someone who's safe. So if you have somebody that is accepting you, is patient with you, is merciful, is not going to be quick to judge, is understanding. They are understanding you and appreciating what you're sharing, and they listen to you without talking over you. You tend to feel like you can open up and you can trust them because they're safe. They draw you out. And the same thing goes with you and others. Now, I am a hard-charging kind of type A. I'm an Enneagram type 8. We're kind of power people on this. And there are innate downsides to that. And part of that is that we can talk over people. People can be around us and not feel particularly accepted because we just are too driven. And I've had to learn to just pull back on the throttle, put the transmission into low, and just go very slow. But for you and I, if we want people to be drawn out, we need to be safe. And are you a safe person to be with? My wife is incredibly safe to be with. She just draws people out. It's just natural to her. I have to work at it. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you're like her. Maybe you're somewhere in between. But these are the things that we need to cultivate this open heart, rich life, that you and I need to give people acceptance and accept them for who they are. We need to be patient because God isn't finished with them yet. Really. We need to be patient because God is the one who's going to change them. We're not going to change them. He's the one that does the changing. Thirdly, we need to show mercy. That is, we don't give people what they deserve. We don't give them their comeuppance. Because that's not how God has dealt with us. God has not given to us as we deserve, but given us what we don't deserve. He's given generosity to us. We need to give them understanding, to listen intently, to be slow to judge. And as we do that, as we listen intently, we draw people out. We experience an open-hearted relationship, the open heart dynamic, open heart to open heart. An open heart to closed heart, well, it's very frustrating. A closed heart to a closed heart is just friction. And an open heart to an open heart is just a beautiful thing. You have a chance to experience this enrichment that God intended, human to human, that God built us for. It's called connection. God has made us for this very thing, both with him and with others. Open heart, rich life. That's the word for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow. God bless you.